Welcome to today's Dragonfly for Industry webinar. The focus of today's webinar is artificial intelligence and deep learning in Dragonfly. And I will get started by introducing myself. For those of you that don't know me yet, I am the Business Development Manager at Dragonfly, and I come with a background in physics, also quite a long history of research in CT applications, not only academically, also industrial applications. And I'm affiliated with Stellenbosch University as a secondary affiliation, as I used to be involved there a lot more. I'm actually based in Stellenbosch in South Africa, if you recognize the South African accent. And I'm also involved in a journal called Tomography of Materials and Structures, which for industrial users might also be interesting to keep track of the latest advances in the field. So just for those of you that would like a bit of a background where I'm coming from. So why are we talking about artificial intelligence and AI for industrial CT? If you are new to industrial CT or to microcomputed tomography, then you might ask, what does this actually mean? Why do we want to use AI? What does it mean to use AI in this context? So I will try to answer this question. For those of you that know already a lot CT and are experts in CT, you might be not having a question, but more a statement that you're too busy working on your data. It's a general problem that data processing and data analysis is a bottleneck and takes a lot of operator time, and therefore you don't have time to learn new tools or to learn the latest tools, which are the AI tools, but actually it can help you very much. So it's a little bit like this cartoon you see here, where the cavemen are not wanting to try the wheel. So let me explain. Let me answer these questions. All of CT imaging is based on segmentation. If you acquire images of any kind, but specifically CT images, you can evaluate the images by eye, but if you want to quantify or automate or measure anything specifically, you need to make a segmentation, which means to define what is what in the image, and this step can be performed by AI. So why is that useful? Firstly, it can reduce human effort. So if you have a challenging data set, or if you have very time-consuming cleanup of data, if you have a bottleneck in data processing, it removes the human effort. It can reduce the human input as the computer takes over the processing. Secondly, it reduces bias, because a human operator can make mistakes or can get tired and can start to change the way that he does his work. And he can make it possible to do analysis on previously impossible data. So AI allows to work with more noisy data. To another benefit for industrial users, you can work with faster scans, which reduces your total time per CT. So that's something that will become a lot more popular as people start making more use of AI in CT. It also allows automation. So if you scan 10 or 100 samples per day, you can run the analysis of all those samples automatically and reduce all human operator time on the analysis side and reduce your bottlenecks. And, for example, do the analysis overnight. So that's enough of the, let's say, theory part. I have 3 examples to share with you today, which benefit from AI in an industrial context. And all 3 of these I will do live demos on. The first is a battery cell, a cylindrical cell, which looks like this with a nice CT rendering. I will jump over to my Dragonfly installation at this point. So I will just get out of the PowerPoint. We'll come back to the PowerPoint slide. So I'm using a remote connection here. So just for interest, if you are interested in working remotely on a different computer, you need a special add-on license for Dragonfly, which is costing some money, but get in touch with the sales team if you are not aware of that. So what I've got here loaded up in this Dragonfly is a cylindrical cell, and in the 3D window, you can see the rendering. Let me just improve the window leveling, the contrasting a little bit, so that you see not only the casing, but also the inside of it. you can use a clipping box to cut it open and get an idea of what we are looking at. So we're looking at these features here. We are interested in these features here. Let me double click on this view at the top right just to show you this. So in a battery cell, there are anodes and cathodes, and these thin features are anodes and these thicker ones are cathodes. What is often of interest is to measure this length of the overhang between them, which if it's too short, it's a problem. If it's too long, it's a problem. So it's an indirect quality measure. Now, you can measure these manually with measurement tools. I will show you in the PowerPoint slides later as well. You can use the rulers, and I'm not going to go into more detail than that. The point is here that this manual measurement process can take a lot of operator time, and it's much better if we can use AI in this example. So the idea of using a practical example like this is that it's giving new users a feeling for the software, and experienced users can pick up some small tricks and tips. So if we are wanting to segment these features, we're interested to segment the cathodes and the anodes in order to make measurements of this overhang. So in order to segment them, normal segmentation tools will take too long and it cannot be automated. So AI is a good solution here because the data is quite complex and the gray values are similar. So the regular thresholding tools don't work very well. So what I will show you is the Dragonfly's segmentation wizard, which allows you to easily train a model even with very limited input data. So before we get to the segmentation wizard, though, there's a little trick that I want to show you, and that is if you're interested in measuring a specific feature like this overhang here, you need the data to be in the XY plane that you want to provide input. So at the moment, you see these little letters. This is the XZ plane. And also this, in this case, on this side here, this is the YZ plane. But in the XY plane, which is the bottom left one, we don't see the overhangs in that orientation. So we need to flip the axes. So that's a little trick that you need to do before training the data to get that part into the correct orientation. So the little trick is you right-click on the name of the data set in the right and go to Modify and Transform and invert the axes. Not inverting the axis directions, but rather doing a transformation of axes, which is not making X, Y, Z, but making X, Z, Y, which would flip the Y and Z axes. I'm going to keep create new on and apply that just to show you what that does. So we're basically making an axis transformation and we are rotating the data. So we create a new data set, which is transformed into a different axis. So if we put the original one off and the new one on, we can see that the view that we would like is in the XY plane, which is the image plane that we will use for the deep learning to provide inputs to the deep learning model. So that's just the first little trick. I'm going to delete the original data here. So the second trick really when you do deep learning is to delete unnecessary volumes, because that all of this is loaded to memory. So it's better to keep your memory as open as possible. I'm working on a relatively small laptop, not a very high-end machine. So I do need to be careful with that. Also, if you are training a model, you don't need the full data. In this case, we just would like to make a segmentation slice by slice or over a couple of slices, not maybe 100 slices, not over the whole data set. So what we can do is we can crop the data to save some memory as well. So I'm going to use the clipping box. Let me just first of all make it visible in 3D. So we see the whole data again and use the clipping box. So the clipping box is a visual thing. It's not yet cropping. It's in Dragonfly defined as clipping is for visual and cropping is for actually the data. So you will see that it's now clipped in 3D, but in the 2D window, you still see the features over a number of slices. So if we want to crop this now, we can right-click and modify and transform and crop the data according to it's automatically loading those values of the clipping box. So let me show that. There's now a clipped volume. We can delete this one and we can open up the clipped volume. So we see now that now we have the clipped volume that we will work with. So this is just a little trick as well when you start to train a model to remove unnecessary things from the memory. You can always load the data and apply the model to the full data later, but for training, you don't need all of it in the memory. So now we are ready to start with deep learning. So we will go to the artificial intelligence drop-down menu and select the segmentation wizard. This is the interactive trainer wizard interface, which allows you to train your own models even without any knowledge of how AI works, which I will show you right now. So when you start that, the first question is, do you want to start with a model? This is optional. You don't need to start with a model. We will start without a model here. And what you will see is a new interface pop up with the XY image plane visible. So what we will do now is we will zoom in to a region that is representative of what you want to do. The reason we zoom in is we don't need to annotate everything in the image, and because this is a live demo, I would like to not spend too much time on this. So I'm going to try and keep it simple. So let's do that. And the zoom that you've done, I've zoomed in with holding down the mouse wheel and dragging the mouse. Then what you can do is you can click this plus button to create a frame. So the field of view is then defined as the frame. So that frame is now defined as frame 1. This frame is how we define classes or paint or annotate specific materials in the volume as input for the deep learning training. So the method that we use here is there's 2 classes by default. The first class, let's say, for instance, you want to make these anodes, the thin features, the class 1. On the left are all the segmentation tools. So the manual segmentation tools for 2D. So you can use a normal paintbrush and you can zoom in and you can go and paint manually, which is obviously time consuming, but you only need to do this over 1 frame. But part of this lesson or demo is to show you some tricks. Some people don't know about this yet. You can use a local Otsu brush. So when you choose the brush, you choose local Otsu as an option and choose upper Otsu. So what this does is it allows you to paint only the brightest pixels under the brush. So that's an easy way of defining what is what in the image here. So if we do that, I'm going to zoom out a bit and we can define that as the first class. And the better you do this as a starting point, the better the training is, the more accurate the training and the faster the training is. So we can do the same thing with a second class. In this case, this cathode materials are also more bright than the surroundings. So that's a reasonably easy way to do it. And now we have 2 classes, but we see there's a third class here, the casing, and there's background. So we need to add more classes for that. Let's add 2 more classes. And we'll see the third class we can paint also with this Otsu brush. It's quite a useful tool like that because it's quite bright. And then the fourth class, you can use a normal paintbrush. If you are in a hurry, sometimes it's easier to just make squiggle lines like this and define the material roughly like this. You can train a model like that. You can train from here a normal machine learning model or a deep learning model. But for both cases in Dragonfly, it's better to define everything. So let's first, before I get there, I forgot a little step. With a purple class 2 on the cathodes, you see there's some holes inside. So when I was preparing, I was thinking I can show you this. There are morphological operators that you can apply here. So you can use a closing function. So if you saw that, let me just undo, just to show that again. If I choose the closing function, it closes up that, which is quite nice, because the next step for the background will be to right-click and add all unlabeled voxels to class. And if I didn't close it up, it would have had some air inside the cathodes, which wouldn't have been ideal. So these are some tricks, and if you miss some of these steps, you can watch the recording later. The recording will again be made available after maybe one day. I think by tomorrow it will be available. So there we have one frame fully painted, and we are ready to start the training. So we get a lot the question, how can you train with only one frame? We have built-in augmentation that I will show you a little bit later. So we don't only use one little frame like that, but let's get into that later. The point of this first step is to show you how simple it is. If we scroll to another slice, I'm now scrolling through the data, and I will zoom in again. We will choose a similar section and make a second frame. And here on this right, on the top right, the first frame, if I click on it again, this was used for mixed, which means it's used for training and validation of the model. So you don't need to understand that, just the fact that mixed is the default. The second frame that we choose now is not going to be used for that. I'm going to use it for monitoring. So you click on monitoring, and when I start the training, this frame will be the one that we will be looking at while it's training. So we are ready to start the training process. I will click now on train. There's a window which pops up because we didn't choose a model yet. And this is a very simple interface for starter users to get started with. You can choose any one of our pre-trained models. The default one that I will use is the first pre-trained model, which is, if you look into it, it's a UNet, and it's a depth 5, and it's a 2D UNet, which means it uses only two-dimensional information, which is something that we can also discuss more later. I just want to click on continue to show you how this process works. So after clicking continue, it loads this model, which is empty, and then it starts the training process. The training process looks like this. You have this window with all the parameters of the model that you have used, even with the number of annotations or annotated voxels in each class, number of patches, and so on. You don't need to be aware of this, but if you are reporting on how you reach a certain solution, this is quite useful to have. And here we see the training process live in a live demo right now on my computer. So you see that this the colors are changing in the view here. So another little trick is you can zoom in and out by using just the scroll wheel of your mouse. So you can see that the class 4 background is quite well defined. Class 3 is quite relatively well defined already. And now we start to converge to a good solution. So you see that even within a minute, we have already a decent model. This model is trained on almost identical frame as the view frame that we are looking at. So I don't expect it to be working over the entire data yet. I just wanted to show you how simple it is and how the interface works. So this is on the left, we see the loss values, which should converge towards 0. They should always reduce. And if you drag this, you can see that they are still reducing even after some time. So if there's no more reduction happening, then the model will stop automatically. There's some auto stopping parameters. You don't need to wait for it. You can stop. So let's say we are happy with the model at this point. We can stop it. And at this point, we can either save the model, exit, and use it and apply it to the full data set, or we can continue to train and monitor. We can check in different areas. Let me demonstrate one more step. So the next potential step here would be to have a look at what the model does on this monitoring frame. So let's go in the input panel. Next to that is a models panel. So there is the model that we have trained. It's at the moment having an eye with a cross line through it. So we can click on that to make the prediction visible. If you do that, you see a split view. So you see the prediction at the bottom and the actual frame, which doesn't have annotations in yet. So what you can do is you can bring this up and say, okay, this is, if I double click the top view, I quite like this. There's no, if there was any mistakes here, you could look carefully and fix those mistakes. I don't see any mistakes here at the moment, so it doesn't help to really try to do that. But let's say, for instance, we had some incorrect labeling of class of the red class down here. Let's say we had some incorrect prediction. You could correct for this. So what you can do is you can click on the blue class and just paint over it, or you can say specifically, if you click the red class and the blue class, then you have an exclusive brush. So if you hold down Control or Shift, the color of the brush would be changing only the other color and not the green one, not any others. So that's called an exclusive brush. It's not the best example of that. So, but the idea is that you can fix up the training data and then continue. So we make now, this is now well annotated. So we can make this a mixed frame and go somewhere else in the data. Let's take a bigger frame like this. As we see, there's a lot of noise at the bottom here. So I don't expect the model to work very well there yet. So what we can do, you can make a prediction. And if you show that prediction, it's using the same model that we have already trained, and it's showing a prediction at the bottom. So here we can now again use this. We can bring this up into the frame and we can correct for this and use this also for training. So if let's do that. We change everything that is red into blue using the full brush. So we're using the exclusive brush, and everything that is purple where it should be blue, we can also do like this. So you can make your brush bigger by scrolling the mouse wheel while you have Control activated. So there we have now a better annotation for this frame. Now we can go, let me just scroll a little bit to another slice, and we can go to the other side of the cell as an example, and we can say, add this as a fourth frame, and this would be then the monitoring frame for a next level of training. So the reason I want to go into this much detail is to show you the iterative process. We have now added 3 frames already, which makes the processing time more because there's more input data. But what I didn't show you yet is the augmentation. So if you right click on the model name, there's something called update training parameters. And without going into all these steps, the data augmentation panel shows you the default augmentation that is used. So the underlying gray values are not changed. The segmentation with the underlying gray values are not changed, but more versions are made. So the frames that you provide as input are split into small patches, blocks of images, which are then rotated and stretched, and you can increase and decrease brightness randomly, add noise. So this is where augmentation happens. The problem is if you increase augmentation, everything gets slower. As we have already increased data ourselves, we can reduce this to make things faster slightly. And we already have some variations across the image. So at this point, we can click on train again, as long as we have a monitoring frame, and the whole process starts again. So let's go, while this is training, let's go back to our slides, and we can come back and see how that does in a few minutes. So the battery example that I've shown you, This, as I explained, is the manual way of measuring the overhangs. You can do it manually very nicely in Dragonfly, but as you can imagine, that takes a long time. So when you train a model, as I've just shown you with a segmentation wizard, this is a little animation showing a training process, how the model converges, where you have the cathodes and the anodes as segmented regions. You can then use these segmentations to make measurements of the Z position or the relative Z positions, and indirectly subtract them from each other and get the overhang length and other information, as you usually do with other features that are segmented also. So what I didn't demonstrate yet, because we want to keep it simple, but it is possible, is to train a model to segment only the overhangs of interest, only the parts that you want to measure. So in this case, you need to provide the inputs in that way, and then in this case use a larger patch size in order. It's almost at the same place where you do augmentation. You just increase the size of the patches so that the model has a larger scale understanding of what we are interested in, and not looking on a very small scale, but over a larger scale. Also, this takes a little bit more data for training to get to that kind of solution, but it is possible. And when you get that, you can get exactly the segmentation that you need. Then you take this yellow region of interest and compute measurements, as always with Dragonfly, where you can measure the 2D axis lengths. These two red ones here are the longest overhangs, and on the right are the distances between overhangs, where the blue ones are closest together. So that's how that is done. If you're interested in more, we will jump to how the training is going right now. I can actually see that it's already doing quite well. But if you're interested in more, on our website is a full application note on this topic with a how-to video associated with that. So you can also view that and that video. So before we get back to maybe I can just introduce the next example. The next example I will run through relatively briefly is casting porosity. So just to give an introduction to this second example is a typical industrial need where you have a metal part with some casting pores inside, these black regions. It's very easy to segment those with normal tools. I will show you that to get the blue segmentation there for the major gas pores. What is not segmented easily are the intermediate gray value regions here, which are shrinkage pore regions, which are also weak points and are of interest as well. So in order to do that, which is a slightly more complex problem, you can use an AI model, which in this case, we've already got an AI model built into Dragonfly that you can use for that. Let me jump back to Dragonfly and tell you more about that. Let me just maximize my screen again. So here we are at the battery cell, and you can see if I zoom in here, it's actually doing a very good job. It's not perfect yet. It's only 5 epochs, so there's a little bit of incorrect classified material in that noise area and there. And you can leave that to train for another 30 minutes or an hour. If it still makes mistakes, you can again repeat the process, stop the training, add training data. So that's a good strategy to improve your model until you have a good enough model, and then you can go and apply it to the full data or to multiple data sets of the same. And that's the topic of the next casting example. So I stopped the training. Let me just demonstrate how to get out of this. If you click on exit, you can save the model, give it a name, and publish it into your installation of Dragonfly. Let me exit in this case without publishing. And let me start a new. Before I start the casting sample, let me just explain also, if you have saved the model and you want to share it with a colleague, you can go into Deep Learning Tool, which is the regular interface for deep learning, which is more the expert interface. Here you have many models where if you click on one, you can export that model, each model that you have trained, to a zip file. You can then share the zip file with your colleague. It's about 100 megabytes zip file. So that's, and then on your colleague's side, they can import the zip. So that's how you can share models within your organization or with others. So what I will do now is I will start a new session. The costing example is relatively fast. I'm not going to save that. What I would like to show here is with castings, typically you don't have just one casting. You typically have hundreds of castings that you want to analyze. So this is often a use case of AI to train one model and then use it over many samples. This is what I would like to show you now. So I'm going to import the milling head data set, which is the data set that the model was trained on, actually. So there's a model built into Dragonfly already. Of course, you can train your own model, but let me just demonstrate here. If we, this is a specific casting. If we look at that with some transparency, you can segment the main pores by right-clicking and going to automated porosity basic Otsu. And you can show that in 3D. So you can easily get to this result here. But as I explained, there's this intermediate gray values that might be of interest. So for that, you might want to use AI to segment these regions in between. So let me just zoom in to make this a simpler case. And we're going to use segment with AI. So on the segment at the bottom, there's a segment with AI panel. Here you can choose the basic casting porosity model, which you can select from our remote library. So this little icon gives you the remote library with more information, and you can install it. So you can use this and you can do a preview, which the preview just segments one slice. So it gives you just this field of view segmented, which is faster than doing the whole data set. And the output is the entire multi-ROI. So you see that, yes, it's including this region here. So this is the idea of the casting porosity model. But the point here is, how do you apply that now to multiple data sets? The most important trick is to use something called intensity calibration. Let me demonstrate. If I import a second casting, I'm going to import now a different scan. I'm going to import this webinar casting uncalibrated. So let me demonstrate what this means. It's a real scan. It's quite a large scan, this one, so it takes a few seconds to load. So let me get the quad view back. Let me put this data on. Let's just show it in 3D. I actually don't want to spend too much time on just showing what we are working with. That's the data set. But if you look at the right here, I think when I was preparing, there was a specific slice region that I wanted to look at, which makes it easier to understand. If you look at this region here, there's some pores and there's some intermediate gray values there. Maybe this is a decent slice as a representative. The point is that the gray values range here from 16,000 to 32,000. What we need to do is we need to calibrate the intensity, because the model was trained on calibrated intensity. So if I right-click on that thing, on that name of that data set, I can go to calibrate intensity scale and choose what's called the century scale. So what that does is it makes the background peak 0 and the material peak 100. And because there are differences between scans, this histogram might shift, or the peaks might move away from each other or towards each other. So if you can click on the log to see the two main peaks, and it's automatically like that. You can also use the little eyedropper tool to choose the background. So if you do that, it's a way of choosing the actual values. But if we calibrate that, then you will see that the calibrated grayscales are now ranging from -15 to 175, where this material is 100 and this material is 0. So what this does is it allows when you train a model on calibrated data, the model always understands that the background is 0 and the material is 100, and the relative features in between are better calibrated. So it's a way to make your model more robust. So if I now apply this same model to this slice, we should have a good result. I didn't have time to demonstrate actually the opposite, where it was not a good result, but you can try this out yourself. And in this case, I'm just doing a preview again, just on the slice section here, just to demonstrate. It's a reasonable, good, decent segmentation as expected for that model. So it's including the intermediate gray values. And if you don't like the model that has been trained and ready to use, you can also load that model. So you can also go through the process of starting a segmentation wizard, taking the data of interest, like this webinar casting, and choosing the pre-trained model, the ready-to-use model, as it's called a basic casting porosity model. Start with the model and then add data to it. This is called transfer learning. So you can use an existing model and add data to it. How that is useful also is if you are often training models on specific types of samples. Let's say you are working often with castings, but different kinds of metals and different kinds of castings. You might have a model for one type of casting and a different model for another type. So that's makes your work easier for that kind of application. All right, I've demonstrated the intensity calibration, which is the most important point here. I already showed how to add data. When you're applying a single model and you're training a single model for application to many data sets, it's quite useful to add augmentation. I already showed you before where augmentation is. So if I just show in Segmentation Wizard again, we didn't actually load a model here yet, so you can just take a UNet model just for demonstration purposes here. Okay, and what you can do is you can right-click, update training parameters, go to augmentation, and when you're having a lot of different variations of scans, you might want to increase brightness and noise, and you can increase these. The more you increase it, the longer the training takes. So I would say do this stepwise and increase it gradually, and you can increase years. So you can increase the augmentation like that in order to make the model more robust to changes in scan quality. So, but the most important one is intensity calibration, and then this is second in line. All right, so that's everything that I wanted to show you on the casting example. Let me jump back to the PowerPoint slides and get back to the last example. So actually just on the casting porosity example, I've got a few more slides to show you the benefit of that. In this case, there is an example of a slice where there's a lot of intermediate gray value pores, which are not segmented by normal methods because they are not so dark. But with an AI model, that can be segmented quite well. On the right-hand side, you see that. Also, it's also useful when you have dark and bright areas in an image. And in this case, there's a basic segmentation which would over segment in this region and under segment in this region. But with an AI model, you can train the model to identify pores in both regions without such an over or under segmentation. The one trick is to increase the augmentation, as I explained. Another trick here is to use inverse class weighting. So in the case of porosity, typically the amount of pores or the amount of pixels which are segmented is quite less than the rest. So there's an option to inverse the class weighting to give more weight to the pores, which is a nice strategy to use when you have this kind of problem. So there's an application note also for that. And the third example is a pharmaceutical capsule. So this is the third example that I want to show you. Let me get straight into Dragonfly for that. So let me just share my screen on full screen again, and I will make a new session again just to clear my memory. And this is a particularly interesting example because Dragonfly is used a lot in this kind of application where you have complex data, but you need to segment them. So let me go into importing this capsule. It's a vitamin C capsule, so it's healthy for you. No prescription needed. So just to give you an idea of what the data looks like, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, on visualizing that. We're running out of time. The point is that you have this cross-sectional data. Let me double click here to maximize this. We have already the data, the easiest segmentation orientation in the XY plane, which is good. We can contrast this with this little contrast square. And there's a couple of things that I want to point out here. The one is there's 2 active ingredients. So you want these different particle types to be segmented. Typically, you want this particle to be segmented with its cracks or pores included so that you have the morphology and size of the whole granule. The second thing to notice is that there's noise in the outside. And there's also there's even artifacts here so that the capsule is not well defined down here. So it might be useful to segment the capsule, but only in some of the slices that you have data which is missing. So that's a nice example also where deep learning can be used to fill in the gaps, and you just need to train a model to identify what should be done in the areas where the data is missing. Let me demonstrate. We're going to go again into Segmentation Wizard. We're going to start without a model. Actually, before we do that, let me just, I forgot a small step. I would like to crop the data again, just to make things easier. I'm going to use a clipping box, and we can do it like this, and like this. And we can make modify and transform, crop, and just apply it directly. We don't need to keep a copy. So now we have a smaller data set. We can delete that. We can start a Segmentation Wizard session. And we can do a start without a model. That's fine. So let's just take this first frame. Let's just zoom in so we don't need to segment the entire frame. Let's just do something like that. Make a plus to create the frame. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 classes here. So we have the 2 types of granules, background, and the capsule walls. So we need to add 2 classes. And I'm going to go a little bit faster. Our time is running out. I'd like to answer some questions at the end. I just want to show some more tools actually which are useful here. There's the Smart Grid tool, which is quite nice to make kind of puzzle pieces latching onto ends. So I'm making the brightest granules now the class 1, and I'm including the air inside of these granules, and there's a brighter particle there, and it's actually, we can toggle this off and on, and we can have a look. That's also a bright particle up there, so I can show that. Yeah. Then we can do the second class again. While I'm doing that, I can also already answer the question, how many frames is useful? I've shown already in this webinar that you can train with just 1 frame or a couple of frames. It's actually good to start with very few frames. And in practice, the more data you give into a model, the better. The only problem is that it becomes slower as you make more input data and takes longer, and it can be sometimes making problems. If you make more and more input data, there can be some mistakes or ambiguities, so differences in segmentation between different. The escape button doesn't work on the remote connection there. So now we have 2 classes. The third class here is the capsule that I would like to demonstrate. Let's make again with a local Otsu brush. It's quite easy in this region. oh, I made it in the wrong way. You can make an undo for that. Let's make upper Otsu. Let's demonstrate like this. So as you see, the brush starts to make problems here at this point. It's because there is no data, and we can come back and clean that up. Let's just get the entire section in. So the idea is to give you some tricks as you're working with your data also. One little trick is you see these loose pixels. You can clean it up by right-clicking and processing islands and remove by voxel count. So everything less than 9 pixels is removed. That's quite nice. And now you can take this region here and fix it up a little bit. So holding down Shift to remove material like that. And we can use something called fill inner areas. So that's one way to close it up. And let's say we are happy with that because of our time is running out as well. So we can now just go and say, add everything else to the 4th class. So there we have one frame. And if we go to, it's, let me just get out of that. So that's actually all I wanted to demonstrate at this point. I'm not going to go any further here. It's exactly the same as our previous examples. I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoint slide at this point because our time is also running out. But that's how you can add data for missing training frames, and you can try that yourself. So it works quite nicely. I'm going to jump out of this and go back to the PowerPoint slides. I will show you a little bit how this works. So this is the same capsule that you've just been looking at. And if you look at that in more detail, there's the capsule which has been segmented. So inputting frames of the missing data. And the main benefit there is to take the different particles out, analyze them separately once they've been segmented. And in general, you can have a look at this application note, which is giving general answers to the capabilities of deep learning, and in which cases it's useful and in which cases it's not. So in a final summary, what makes Dragonfly AI the best on the market for this kind of application? It's been in the software since 2017. It's not since the new latest AI hype. It's been optimized over many years. We have the widest range of tools and the most advanced capabilities. These include any number of phases of material or classes, any number of input data sets. You can add different input data sets into one training. I didn't show that today, but it's quite easy to do that. I've shown 2D models. You can also do 2.5D, which means having three-dimensional context into the model. Also, full three-dimensional models are possible. Mostly 2.5D is recommended, and having input data in one frame and three-dimensional information to some extent over a couple of slices is more than enough for most cases. Any kind of deep learning architecture, also normal machine learning is possible, and transfer learning is what I showed you today, specifically how to add data to models. We have pre-trained models which help you to converge faster to some solution, and it's possible to share models between users. You can use all of this for automating work with macros. So you can call a deep learning model from a macro. So those are all of our partners. And at this point, I would like to open up the table for some questions. Thank you, everybody, for sticking through that. It's already quite late, but I cut short the last example just to save some time for questions.
Hi, Anton.
Hi, Zishan.
Very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for supporting.
Yeah, we got some questions and I answered most of them, I think. So if you check the questions, I archived some of them. So for people who asked, or if you want more discussion with Anton, it's time to do it again. So send your new questions in the Q&A. I saw questions about how to choose the frames for validation, about 2.5D, what does it mean?
Okay.
Also for calibration and normalization.
So maybe the first question that I just noticed here is asking about AI denoising. It's a very good question, and I didn't mention it yet. At the moment, 90% of use is for making segmentation with deep learning and with AI, which is why this is what I focused on today. Of course, using AI for denoising is also possible, but it's a different topic and it takes an hour session at least on its own. So what I didn't mention yet, besides the fact that we will make more webinars, of course, in future, but if you are having an active support plan, our technical support desk are experts at AI. So if you have specific questions, how to use AI denoising or how to solve an AI segmentation problem or how to use any tools, they are there for you and they are experts on that topic. So not just for problems, but also for advice on how to do things. So make use of that. It's quite expert level deep learning expertise there. So other question that you mentioned, Zishan, was about 2D versus 2.5D. So I didn't show it specifically because 2D is faster. I was using a 2D model. 2D means the frame itself is cut into little patches and used for training and then applied on a single frame. 2.5D by default uses 3 slices. So you give one frame input, but the frame above and below it is also used. The underlying gray values are used. So it has some 3-dimensional context. And that's useful when you have a 3-dimensional data set, of course. You can also increase the amount of 3-dimensional information. So not just 3 slices, but 2 slices above and below, making it 5 slices or 7 slices or 9 and so on. The more you give it 3-dimensional context, the slower the whole process becomes in training. So it's depending on the size of your computer and how much 3-dimensional context you need. It might be that a 2.5D with three slices is more than enough for most cases, which is why that's the default that most people are using. Let's see if there's some new questions. So there was a question just now about, at the time of scanning a sample, any specific settings that make AI tools better? This is hard to answer. I would say it depends a lot on the application. As I explained, if you have really noisy data, that's something where if you have very good scan quality, maybe that's something that I can explain. If you have very good scan settings and very good scan quality, there's no reason to use AI because normal thresholding, automatic thresholding tools can also be automated, and then that everything works automatically much faster. AI tools are really useful when the normal tools fail or when you have really challenging data sets which change a lot the way normal tools don't work anymore. So that's really indirect answer to that is really if you have very good scan settings and very good quality, you don't actually need AI. Okay, let's see. Thanks a lot for the positive comments. Appreciate that. So there's a question, if I repeat my training with the same data again, will the result always be the same with the same training parameters? Zishang, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think it won't be exactly the same because every time you train the model or you create a new model, the weight of the model will have some differences. It's not in a certain way. So the starting point is different already. So when you train the model with the same data or same settings, you will get almost the same performance, but not pixel-wise exactly same.
So maybe what I can add there is if you, what we do in the segmentation is Wizard, when we define classes, is we are basically making a multi-ROI with input frames with segmentations. If you provide exactly the same input frames every time, you will get exactly the same result if you train in the same way and the same time. In a similar way, if you use exactly the same model and apply it to exactly the same data with different computers, different days, whatever, you will get exactly the same answer. So it's highly repeatable, but it depends if you change a couple of voxels in the input data or apply slightly to a different data set, there will be a couple of voxels different here and there. So that's why you need to train over a long enough time to make it robust, to include enough augmentation, to include enough data. And that's why the Dragonfly segmentation wizard is quite nice, that you can adjust your models as needed. So in practical scenarios, you would train models and update them and check them constantly, depending on if things have changed with your data that you want to segment.
We got some new questions.
Okay. There's one from Shiva. Nice to see you here, Shiva. Converting 32-bit images to 16-bit images. What does the normalize option do, and how does it affect the image and the histogram? It's not about deep learning specifically. Zhishang, do you know the answer to that question?
Well, first of all, the 32-bit is that a float or is that an integer? I suppose it's float. When we convert that to 16-bit short, I think it doesn't change the image quality or histogram. It's just change how we present the grayscale value for each pixel. Of course,
and the normalize option.
Some change, right? It's a normalize. It's a tool to convert the format, like exactly here, from the float, 32-bit float to 16-bit integer. So it's a tool to convert the data format for each pixel, the grayscale.
Okay. So I just want to, it makes me think of something here also for all of you. This might be interesting. In the Dragonfly Social, which is, most of you know about that already. If you go into Dragonfly Social, there's a chat bot that you can ask questions like this to. That chat bot knows much more than us. So it might also be useful to ask the chat bot that question. Maybe it's a more complete answer. Andrew was asking, oh, by the way, you can also ask your questions anonymously. You don't need to name yourself. When we apply the segmentation model to our full data set, there's a column called weight preset to 1 for each class. What values can I adjust these weights between? I actually don't know the answer to that. Do you know that, Zhishang?
There's no limit for that. It's a relative, like numbers, like the weight. If you choose 1 for one class, then 100 for a second class. So okay. It's 1 versus 100.
Okay, great. Maybe time for one more question. If we want to segment a cell body, so much variance in the gray values itself, will AI consider this as one body, or will it increase error chances? Sounds like a challenging data set. The AI is trained on the data that you give it. So if you provide input examples of that, what you want to segment, it will work. If you, it's exactly just, you have to get experience just trying it and using the segmentation wizard. And if it doesn't work with one frame, apply a frame to another region. And there where it doesn't work, add that data as further input. So that's there's not a clear answer to that. thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I appreciate you to join us and support us, and good luck with your deep learning, and make use of the support desk. If you have a support plan, as I said, they have a very good expertise to advise you also. So thank you very much, and have a great day, and see you next time. Thank you also to my team for supporting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ishan.
Yeah, thank you, Anton. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.